Hello there makers, it's Jo from Minerva. Today I'm going to take a look at sewing stretch knits with a really interesting pattern that I would like to showcase called the Alison Glass Knit Essentials. The pattern first appears to be a dress pattern, a knit dress pattern, and for quite a lot of figures a knit dress pattern is a sort of no-go area. It could be really comfortable to wear for work, but quite often that's not a style that everybody likes. But the pattern is a little bit deceptive because it's not just that pattern. Inside there are 6 variations of knit garments that all fit around a similar block. Let's take a closer look at inside the packet because it's quite a large pattern to show you. So this is the cover. As I was saying, it's only got the one garment on the front, but inside it shows you that you can have the opportunity to make a short sleeve t-shirt with some applique embellishment, a long sleeve t-shirt with a clover patch embellishment, skirts with an embroidery hem, and then it shows you how the components from this pattern work together, how to add ruffles to hems. It's got this tunic which can be worn as a dress but also cut short as a tunic. You can wear just the short top, one with the skirt. Shows you how to do these ruffle hems. That's making that set there. There is a dress. There's 2 different skirt finishes. There's a sort of A-line skirt and there's a pencil skirt. Gives you lots of information about fit. Shows you how to choose the right size, trace the pattern, and then there's a page here for measuring yourself, and it shows you all the key points to measure. And this is a bit that's really interesting to me because it's not just a pattern to put on the neck binding. It shows you really easily how to put a neck binding on, how to add the elastic, how to do a different neck binding. It's got some size charts for your finished measurements. Shows you how to make a muslin. Gives you some fit questions and answer session there. And then it shows you how to make the basic knit dress. So there's the knit dress instructions. There's the tee instructions. There's the skirt instructions. There's a maxi skirt and a short skirt. Tank top. And then the tank top tunic. And then the last chapter has some of the embellishing techniques, which I'll show you in a different video. Here's how to put ruffles on. Here's how to put the tiered ruffles on. So you will need to trace off your pattern onto Swedish tracing paper, because the pattern comes on single pattern sheets. And they're not big, it's 2 A4 pieces joined together. So you've got bodice pieces to choose from. And it all fits neatly in the envelope in the back of the packet. And when you've traced off your own sizes, you can pop them in the packet. So that's a closer look at the pattern itself. I like the way that the pattern includes some fitting for knits, because quite often we sort of think of knits as it not needing any fitting because of the stretchy fabric, but you will still need to get better at sewing knits in terms of fit. So the key places you want to check are here. So you want to make sure your shoulder length is correct, because a t-shirt that has a short shoulder then scoops up some of the sleeve and you'll get a dipping hem. And you'll get a little bump there where the ridge of the seam is in the wrong place. So that's one key fitting place. Also, you'll need to make sure that you've got the bust right, because if it's too tight, you'll get drag lines here. And if it's too loose, you'll get this like this here. So even though it's a stretch fabric, it's not going to do everything for you. You will need to do some fitting yourself. I'm wearing a viscose jersey, which has a little bit of drape. So this one is quite floppy, and that suits this design here because it's got a really flush top and a loose fitting bottom. The sort of fabrics that you need to pick for this pattern are cotton jerseys, because they're a little bit more stable, and also you'll be able to mix and match the patterns and use parts of one colour to embellish on another. If you try and use viscose jersey for embellishments, it sort of goes all floppy and doesn't really hold its shape. So you'll be looking to use the curl on a cotton for some of your embellishment features. I've got a navy, a patterned one, and a damson colour, and all of those would coordinate to make different garments from this pattern, so you get a full wardrobe. The fabric and the pattern are listed below over on the Minerva website, so if you'd like to check them out, you can go and see, because there's a lot of colours in this damson range, so there's lots and lots to choose from, so you could pick that as your core colour and build your garments around that. I'm going to split this tutorial into two parts. So today I'm just going to show you how to make the basic tee. I've chosen the V-neck one so that I can show you how to make the little V shape at the bottom, which sometimes flummoxes people because you get a little sort of twist at the front. So I'm going to show you that. And then in my second video, I'm going to show you all the embellishments. Let's start with the basic t-shirt. The pattern has a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which is very small. That's sort of 6 millimeters. But that does lend itself to using your overlocker. So if you want to set up and save yourself some time and really make sure that you get the right fit for the right measurements, then you can set up yourself with a 1/4 inch seam allowance on your overlocker. So I've made my overlocker stitch a 1/4 inch. I've got lots of thread in it, so I haven't got it too baggy. I've changed the stitch width so that it's quite narrow, so it really fills it in. And then I've got a really firm and sturdy seam there. When I pull it, it's not pulling apart. So I really had to play with my overlocker, change my stitch width and stitch length, made sure on the differential feed it wasn't taking it too much or too quickly and making it wobbly. So now I can make a really quick t-shirt because I've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance with my overlocker and it's sewing at the same time. If you've not got an overlocker, you just need to be aware that you'll be sewing with a very narrow seam allowance of 1/4 inch. First thing to do is to put the front and back right sides together and sew across the shoulders. Make sure you're pressing as you go, because with jersey you can't sort of get into corners because you'll stretch out the fabric. So as you do each part, press as you go. This is the shoulder seam, so I'm going to press that towards the back. Here's the front and this is the back. So I'm going to press that before I insert the sleeves. If you're using overlocking as your form of holding the garment together, then you need to thread the ends in. If I'm using it just to finish raw edges, I don't always do it. I sometimes just chop them off. But if I'm using this for actually holding the garment together, then I want to make sure that I pull the threads back through, not just snip them off at the end. I've done that one there. Okay, it's time to add the sleeves. So you lie the garment down with the sleeve open and you match up your sleeve edges so that you've got the right one, and you're going to pin it together and start with the underarm. And if you're going to sew on the overlocker, then you need to pin a little bit further away from the edge of the seam, because you don't want the blade to catch. That's too close. You don't want the blade to catch on a pin. I've done that before. Ended up having to buy a new blade. So, and then you match up the head point with the shoulder seam. And then you can ease in the fabric by matching up the notches. once you've put the sleeves in, you can then flip it right sides together and sew the side seams. This isn't included in this pattern, but I found it to be useful in a lot of other patterns. Before I turn this sleeve in half, I'm just going to press the hem down one turn so that I don't have to try and measure and get the iron inside my hem of my sleeve. So I'm just going to press the sleeve up flat, not sew it, just press it so I get a little crease line for when I want to turn up the sleeve. So I've just pressed up a little press line there for my hem, but I'm not going to sew it. I'm going to continue with the pattern. Keep those flat. So I've got the line ready pressed. When I get to the seams, I'm going to push one seam one way and one seam another so that I don't get bulk. So I've got one going that way and one going that way, so I get a nice thin seam. And I'm going to pin down the sides and sew with my 1/4 inch overlock seam, or you'd be sewing with your sewing machine seam. Don't forget, if you're sewing just with a normal sewing machine, you won't need to zigzag the edges of this fabric, because it will just curl and hold its shape and it won't fray. So it's a really super quick make. Whether you're sewing on your sewing machine or on an overlocker, it's really important not to stretch your fabric because you'll get ripply seams. So just let the machine feed dogs take the fabric through. Right, we're going to press the sides so that we don't get that sort of lumpy bumpy side seam, but you should have a good match all the way up to your arm join, and then we can start working on the neckband. The neckband is a strip of fabric that you put around the neck. There's lots of different ways to do it. This one has a neckband that folds over and is top stitched. I'm going to put a basic band on here, and then I can show you some different ways with a raw rolled edge and a ruffle edge, and I'll show you those in another tutorial that will go with this pattern. So the first thing I'm going to do is to make that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to do a little trick that's not in the pattern, which is to fold the binding in half and snip the seam allowance. Now you've got to be really careful on a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you need some really sharp scissors. So now I can fold one seam allowance one way and one the other, so that when I fold it in half, I get quite a flat seam at the back neck, because if I have both of those that way and then fold them over, I have one very thin side and one very thick side. So I'm going to split that seam in half so that I get to spread the seam allowance between one side of the seam and the other. It's not an instruction you hear much in sewing patterns, but I'm going to put the right side of the neckband to the wrong side of the top. And I'm going to match up the notches with the shoulder seam. And I have another notch here for the other shoulder seam. And I also have a notch for the centre front. And I'm going to show you how to do this V-neck front today using the instructions from this pattern. So now I've got the main points, I'm going to ease the fabric between the points, and you need to have the band needs to be a little bit tighter than the hole so that your neckband doesn't flop forwards. I'm pinning now with the glass heads on the outside so that when I'm sewing around the neck hole I don't scratch myself and I can easily pull the pins out. This bit is going to be sewn on a regular sewing machine because I don't want the bulk of all the overlocker threads inside the neckband. And you will see there, look, the top is bigger than the neckband, but I will stretch between them. So when you've eased in the neckband, you're now going to sew that at the continuing 1/4 inch seam allowance using your regular sewing machine. So this is the right side of the top and you've got the neckband attached onto the inside of the t-shirt, and what you're going to do is fold the binding in half and then fold it over the raw edge seam that you've just made, and you're going to do that all the way around. So fold the flappy bit of neck binding in half and enclose the raw edge, and you can keep doing that all the way around, and then you will actually sew this from the right side, so you'll get to see what your finish looks like. If you do this the other way around, where you put right sides to right side, when you sew it you sometimes jump on and off the binding, so it's better this way round, because this way round you can see exactly the finish that you're going to get. And you're going to do that all the way round, even on the V here, so you'll have a V that's all splayed out, and then I'll show you the final stage of making that into a V shape. When you get to the back seam, you might need to just cut a little bit of that bulk off, but just be careful that you have split it. So make sure you remember to split one side one way and one side another. So that you can spread some of that bulk. Okay, so this is the neckband attached. So you can see from the right side, got a really neat top stitch, and from the wrong side, you know, it's a bit on, it's on there, it's a little bit off there, but at least I'm getting that on the inside and I'm getting this really nice finish on the outside. You'll see from this top I haven't quite got a V-neck. I've got a sort of little bit of a crease and a bit of a wave down here, and I want to make that a really nice crisp V-neck. So what I want to do is turn the t-shirt inside out and fold my top in half, along the centre front seam, and I'm going to sew that point together. It would need a little clip on the inside actually. I should have done a little clip so that I don't get a crease, but I think I can do it by manipulating the stretch fabric. So I'm going to sew so that I've got that little triangle bit there. So now I've got a V shape that's much more pronounced, with that straight line that's running along the center line. Inside I've got a little triangle. If it's bothering you, you can just fold it to one side and hand stitch it down, but that's quite a soft jersey, so that's fine. So that's the V-neck attached with a binding. You can also add ruffles around here, you can add the clover finish around here, and you can also add a raw edge, and I'm going to show you those in another video. So the last thing to do on your basic tee is to turn the hems, and you'll see now why I did that little press before, because now I haven't got to try and measure and press all of that stretchy circle on the ironing board. I can just fold it and fold it again, and that's the hem. I saw that technique on another pattern and it's so useful. I do it on stretch patterns and on woven patterns for turning up sleeve hems. That you did on the facing. If you want, you can take a little snip, split the seam allowance so you don't get all the bulk in one place. And that's now ready to sew without too much measuring and stretching and trying to get the iron to press down a narrow hem. That's the same technique I'm going to use on the hemline. So I'm going to press it and then fold it again and stitch. You can top stitch there, or you can do a single stitch. Just remember that you might want to have your machine on a stretch stitch so that you get that element of stretch remaining to get it over your head and maybe even across your hips so it's comfortable, so you don't hear the threads go tick, tick, tick as they split. So there you are, you've made it a basic tee from the Alice in Glass pattern, and that means if you can make the t-shirt, then you can actually make the dress as well, because you'll just be joining the skirt pieces onto your top pieces on the paper before you cut out, and then that would be your t-shirt that you've just made, and then it would be extended, so it's all exactly the same skills, the hemming, and you would just be taking a longer seam down the side. So if you can make the t-shirt, you can make the dress. So you've made 2 items from the Alice in Glass pattern. If you've used the Alice in Glass pattern, we would love to see what you've made. Don't forget to tag the pattern and any fabrics that you chose. If you choose to make the dress, you could use a Ponte Roma, which is a really much thicker fabric, and then you would need to make sure that you've got the stretch going across your hips and across your bust, because Ponte Roma fabric has a stronger stretch in one direction than another, so make sure that you cut your fabric. That would look absolutely classic in a navy and white stripe, but we'd love to see what fabrics you've chosen, so make an account and upload your picture and your project for us to see. Let's have a look at the top when it's being worn, and you can see the V-neck gives a different style of tee, and it's got quite a wide fitting around the hips. So you get that sort of waist fitting here and the hips here, not too long, nice room across the bust, and I'm just about right on the shoulders. I probably maybe could take ½ centimetre off that shoulder seam just so that I don't get too much, but that's a good fit. The sleeves are 7 inches long on me, so you could take another seam allowance if you prefer them shorter. So it's all about customising the pattern to make your favourite knits. Thank you very much for watching today's tutorial. There's a follow-up to this video, which is to use the embellishments out of the pack to embellish the t-shirt. Do call in for that, because there's some really interesting things that you could transfer to all the other designs and garments in the same pack.